Alrighty then, YouTube. You know what time it is. I am Shaggy Philalitea. This is episode 21 of a dizzying array of metatext with the Gospel according to John. And we are going to pick up right where we left off last time. It's been 20 episodes. I don't feel like I need to introduce myself at the beginning of these, or what I'm doing or why anymore. So we're just going to pick right up at John 3:25. No, we're not. We're going to pick up at John 3:22 on the off chance that I didn't read this last time. After this, that is, after he declares his famous "For so God loved the world" speech, Jesus and his disciples went into the Judean countryside, and Jesus remained there with them and was baptizing. John was also baptizing at Aenon near Salim, because water was plentiful there, and people were coming and being baptized, for John had not yet been put in prison. Now a discussion arose between some of John's disciples and a Jew over purification. And they came to John and said to him, "Rabbi, he who was with you across the Jordan, to whom you bore witness, look, he is baptizing, and all are going to him." John answered, "A person cannot receive even one thing unless it is given him from heaven. You yourselves bear me witness that I said, I am not the Christ, but I have been sent before him. The one who was," that was the end quote, or no, that is not an end quote. "The one who has the bride is the bridegroom. The friend of the bridegroom who stands and hears him rejoices greatly at the bridegroom's voice. Therefore this joy of mine is now complete. He must increase, but I must decrease." That's strange language. He who has the bride. We're back to the wedding chamber ceremony. And so that means that Jesus has done some sort of marriage to some sort of thing. This is not in quotes. "He who comes from above is above all," says our author John, who is also channeling John the Baptist. "He who is of the earth belongs to the earth and speaks in an earthly way. He who comes from heaven is above all. He bears witness to what he has seen and heard, yet no one receives his testimony. Whoever receives his testimony set his seal to this, that God is true." And that's Aletheia. "For he whom God has sent utters the words of God, for he gives the Spirit without measure." This means that what he's married to isn't the Spirit. He's not married to the Spirit. The Spirit isn't the bride in this context. He gives the Spirit without measure. And without measure means he doesn't use a measuring cup like you would do at a cafeteria, right? He just freely gives what you need, and what you need is the Spirit. And so he gives as much of it as what you need. And that's not Jesus. That's just any man of God, any woman of God. This is how they live. "The Father loves the Son and has given all things into his hand. Whoever believes in the Son has eternal life. Whoever does not obey the Son shall not see life, but the wrath of God remains on him." Now when Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus was making and baptizing more disciples than John, although Jesus himself did not baptize, but only his disciples, he left Judea and departed again for Galilee. That's interesting. Because it says here in 22, that is the beginning of chapter 4. I didn't say that, sorry. But in the previous chapter, Jesus and his disciples went into the Judean countryside, and Jesus remained there with them and was baptizing. And then here, although Jesus himself did not baptize, but only his disciples. Now, is it saying only his disciples baptized, or is it saying that he baptized his disciples? Jesus left Judea and departed again for Galilee. This is chapter 4, verse 4 now. "And he had to pass through Samaria." Now, Samaria is interesting, and we might need to actually talk about this a little bit, because I've been trying to figure out what's going on with Samaria. Why is God so angry at Samaria? And now Micah and Amos and some of these older prophets that I've read for you and that I'll need to reread and revisit. But some of these prophets make it very clear that Samaria was more interested in Assyrian culture than they were in Judean culture. But that is something that the Judean prophets say about all of the tribes of Israel. And so what that means is the tribes not Levi and Judah. So there's little way for me to be sure that what they're doing isn't casting backward, retrodicting why these people no longer exist. But I've been reading, and by reading I do mean listening to, After 1177 by Eric H. Klein, which I highly recommend that you read. 1177, the year civilization ended, I believe is the name of the book, the full title. And then having read that, definitely read the new version. And then having read that after 1177 is very interesting, because after 1177, that book, he actually talks a lot about the Jews and about the exile and about, because it's about that part of the world. It's about the Mediterranean world, and it's about after the Bronze Age, the late Bronze Age collapse of the Mediterranean. Yes, all of that is true. It's about all of that. But the documented histories that we have for that time and that place are, I'm going to say 80%, and have been primarily the Hebrew Bible and the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, but also the Jewish Christian accounts of that time. So really what we have is the Torah and Chronicles and Judges and Joshua. You understand what I'm saying? We have and then the prophets as far as telling us what happened. But the Torah is intentionally doing time magic, where they're intentionally moving events around in time to mind fuck you into puzzling it out for yourself, right? That's an initiatory ritual, a mystical initiatory ritual in its own right, the Torah. And then Chronicles and Kings, I think. But Chronicles and Judges, for sure, from my perspective, maybe Kings, but Chronicles definitely contradicts the Torah on a lot of historical details, contradicts it intensely, and Chronicles lines up much more closely with the actual history, with the actual archaeology. And so what he's doing is he's cross-referencing, and he should be. He and all of the people digging in that part of the world should be cross-referencing everything they know from that part of the world with the Bible, with Homer, with Hesiod, and then with the documentation that they found in situ in these dead civilizations that have just been left in the desert. And so what that means is we have huge libraries of cuneiform writings, Hittite writings, Phoenician writings, Canaanite writings, and they're only now being translated, only within the last 20 years. And then since COVID specifically, have historians and interested parties had enough time, because of the way time is managed in academe, they've only had enough time now to dig through that stuff, because translating, digging through, collating, librarying, and archiving all of that stuff is not lucrative. You understand? That's the busy work, but the necessary busy work, the hands to the grindstone, nose to the grindstone is what they say. But that's the work, the labor, right? the getting your neck red and the sun and your hands hard from labor. That's the labor of archaeology, anthropology, history, etc. And they don't like doing it because it doesn't get paid, right? But in the same way that being the guy who actually lays the bricks doesn't make as much money as the foreman, being the person who actually translates, archives all of this stuff does go unrewarded. And that's why Eric Klein is rapidly becoming one of my heroes, because what he does is name all of these archivists for history. Now we know their names in the same way we know Ashurbanipal's archivists. And that's a huge deal. These people that did all that work, they deserve to have their names go to credit. They deserve for their names to get the credit. And now I'm going to talk about what I learned from 1177 BC, that is after 1177 BC. But first, I have to void my bowels. So let's hope that I can remember that. Okay, and probably off topic, but maybe not. The way people behave in public bathrooms is just unacceptable. Look, that stall isn't closed so you can have, like, leisure time. It's not there so you can read a book and take 20 minutes on the pot. It's there so you can get done quickly because no one's watching you. Let's move this shit along. Pun intended. And, you know, the bathroom, the public bathroom is not your home. It's not your private bathroom. Men take a long time in there at home because they want the alone time. They just want to be unbothered for however long they decide they're going to sit on the pot and do other things. And women take note of it because women want to be bothering us. So, women, if you could manage your time worth a damn, you wouldn't be so obsessed with how we spend ours. One of the things I noticed that absolutely kills relationships is women thinking that they're busy, and because they're busy because they can't manage their time worth a damn, their husband isn't busy enough. Husband or boyfriend. Or partner. You can be a lesbian. Whatever. They think that because they're running around like a chicken with their head cut off and everybody else isn't, that everybody else must be doing something wrong. And it's like, no, darling, you just can't manage your time worth a damn. Stop trying to manage mine. You can't manage yours. That's a big part of why I'm single. Don't fucking try to manage my time. Tell me where I need to be and articulate it to me in a way that I'll have cause to remember. And I'll be there 5 minutes early and it'll be done before you even knew it needed done. Don't try to manage me. If you try to manage me, it's a job and you're not paying me. No woman pays her man after she's secured his time. None. Zero. Even that meme that was going around isn't actually rewarding him for his time. So Samaria. I picked this book up to look busy, but we were talking about Samaria. And the Viking stuff that I've told you about from the Bible, where certain Jewish cities were doing small-scale warfare and stealing and selling the proceeds, the loot, the women, the children, the male slaves, selling them to Assyria and other parts of Phoenicia, Canaan. And in after 1177 BC, he makes the point. I did a short about it on Saturday, but while I was listening to it, I just paused it and I said, ha ha, there it is. He said it. But the Hittites called the Anatolian Greeks Yahwites. So the Ionian tradition was already in place when the Hittites were around. So the Ionian Jewish Yahweh connection does go back before 1200. Judea, seems to have come out of Africa. The Assyrian languages do seem to have come north out of Africa. I said the Assyrian languages. I meant to say the Semitic languages. And so the Torah's folk etymologies and folk genealogies for these different peoples in the area make sense. They were already there. And so you have to explain how these people who were already here, and the time that you're saying the Exodus happened. But the thing is, the Exodus didn't happen in the time. It didn't happen at all, is the thing. It didn't happen at all. But the people who did leave Egypt were leaving a Semitic-speaking pharaoh. And just the same way that the Ptolemies were Greek-speaking pharaohs, right? There were Semitic-speaking Cushite and Libyan pharaohs. And so when you can just look on the map for any place that's called Cush, and you can know that Egyptian Jews lived there. But they weren't Egyptian in the way you think. Northern African Jews that identified themselves with the Egyptian pharaoh and who were mining for the Egyptian pharaoh. But that's sort of neither here or there. What seems to be the case is that the Judeans came out of Africa. They seem to have been the last kingdom to arrive in that area. We say kingdom, but they seem to be the last of the Semitic-speaking people groups to settle in the area. And it seems like the others had been there long enough that they had already gone Canaanite, effectively. In fact, I was reading Judges, and Samson is one of the judges, and the Samson and Delilah story is very interesting because he had a wife before Delilah, and his story is just Hercules. He's just Heracles. The thing is that Heracles isn't native to Greece, as we understand it. Heracles is probably native to Anatolia, which means that he predates all of this stuff, and including him in the biblical canon is to include one of their culture heroes. And if the things that he did in that story he did, then I don't know. There's no direct, it's not obvious. The direct parallels are weird, but the thing that I found most interesting, and the reason I bring it up, is because Samson isn't Judean. He's from a different place. He's from a surprising place. And I don't remember what it was because this isn't what I'm talking about. But it seems very much that what happened is that the Samarians are the people who were in Judea to begin with. They were the people who were already there. Maybe the people who were sent there first. And they went native. They went all the way Canaanite. And that's in the archaeological record. They went all the way, which means that the frustration that the judges and the prophets of the biblical canon, of the Hebrew canon, their frustration and difficulties that they're having with the Asherah trees and with Astarte worship and with Dogon and Dagon, I think is actually his name, worship, and the broadly Palestinian, Phoenician, Canaanite, Carthaginian eugenics cult, prostitute cult, and child sacrifice thing, they were doing that early and had been doing it a long time. They were in rebellion against God as a people the whole time. The Samarians were considered the bad guys. And so Jesus goes to Samaria, and the archaeology suggests that the Samarians, from the biblical, from the perspective of the prophet speaking in the name of God and saying not to be effectively Phoenician, the Samarians would be the deepest evil in the area, because they kept not just the things that came out of Africa. This chapter I'm familiar with, so we're going to talk about some of the things that came with the Samarians out of Africa, and this is going to end up being two parts of that. But they also seem to have adapted the worst of the Levantine eugenics cult, which means they were matriarchal. What that means is that the women, whether they actually had power politically, had all of the power socially. They determined everything from religion to policy, to government policy. So Jesus goes to Samaria. So he came to a town of Samaria called Sychar, near the field that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Now that's not irrelevant, because the reason Jesus is going to this place is because he's claiming to be effectively the inheritor of this land, that Jacob gave this land to his son Joseph, and Jesus is supposed to be the most recent heir of the house of Joseph. Jacob's well was there. Wells are a big deal. So Jesus, wearied as he was from his journey, was sitting beside the well. It was about the 6th hour. I don't know what that means. A woman from Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink," for his disciples had gone away from the city to buy food. The Samarian woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria? This is not just drink." You understand, she's drawing from this well, and he's asking her to give him a drink. He could draw from the well. He could drink from the well too. So why is he asking this woman to unparch his thirst? Why is he asking this woman to share with him? And she wants to know, well, you're Jewish. Why would you want me to share with you? Your people thinks that my people are dirty, and what you don't do is share bread and water with dirty people. And this goes on to parenthetically say, for Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. And it's like that. It's very much the segregation of the South that the Democrat Party put into place after the Civil War. It's very much that. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." What is living water, do you think? Do you think it's real water? Probably not, right? You know, the previous chapter was talking about how Jesus, the historical John the Baptist, according to the ghost of John the Baptist as channeled by our author here, told us that Jesus is married to something. And because he's the bridegroom, the person who stands beside him at the front, the head of the wedding, this isn't a European-style wedding. We would need to know exactly how these people got married in order for us to imagine what this looks like correctly, but that's not the point. The point is that John the Baptist was happy to stand beside Jesus, the bridegroom, as effectively best man. Again, not the Western tradition, so not that, but not dissimilar either. And then here in the next scene, Jesus is talking to a woman, and he says, "If you knew who I was, if you asked me why I was asking you for a drink, you would know that I could give you living water." Well, what is living water? What does that sound like? Well, it sounds like semen to me, because that's what she's here for. She's here to get a man to provide for her. That's how this usually goes. And so what he's saying is, I could provide everything you ever needed if you had let me drink that, because you knew who I am. And the woman says to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw water with, and the well is deep. Where do you get that living water?" So we understand this is not a historical moment. This is a mystical scene. The well is deep. It goes into the earth, and water, the water of life, comes out. But he's talking about water that is living, not the water of life. This is a mystery. This is a riddle. From the ghost of John the Baptist to us, this is a riddle. Because remember, John the Baptist has already told us that he's not the Elijah. He's not a water wizard. So what is Jesus doing in this scene as somebody who claims to be the Elijah reborn with this water? What is he doing? It's magic. He's doing something water wizardy, something Elijah with this water. He's converting it in some way into something else. But he's doing it not magically, not through an alchemy of actually changing the water. He's using the water, the author and Jesus are using the water as a metaphor for something greater, something more abstract, something spiritual, something metaphysical. The well is deep. She continues to ask, are you greater than our father Jacob? He gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did his sons and his livestock. Jesus said to her, everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks of the water that I will give him will never be thirsty again. And in the Greek, that actually says never be thirsty forever. Thirsty for what? Knowledge, right? Knowledge of the truth, right? Knowledge of righteousness, the knowledge of the way to heaven. He continues, but whoever drinks of the water that I will give him will never be thirsty again. The water that I will give him will become in him a spring of water welled up to eternal life. Strangely Tao, don't you think? Having listened to me read from the first several chapters of the Tao because you've been to the Patreon and you care about the work that I've done for you and setting the groundwork for you to understand this book. Jesus continues, I'm going to read that again. The water that I will give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life. Welling up. Welling up. That's interesting. He uses a pun right there. Instead of having to reach down into the depths of the earth, the depths of your soul, the depths of your spirit, instead of having to go into the dark night of the soul to just get a little bit of water to quench yourself with, Jesus is saying, I will make you a spring that burbles out, that like a well that scooshes water everywhere when you need it, like a fountain is what you will become. A fountain of knowledge, a fountain of life. The woman said to him, Sir, give me this water so that I will not be thirsty or have to come here to draw water. And Jesus says to her, he doesn't say this, but what he looks at her like is, foolish woman, I am speaking in abstractions. This is why your people are doomed. Jesus said to her, Go, call your husband and come here. The woman answered him, I have no husband. Jesus said to her, You are right in saying I have no husband, for you have had 5 husbands. The one you now have is not your husband. What you have said is true. The woman said to him, Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you say that in Jerusalem is the place where people ought to worship. Now here's the thing. She's saying, I know that you're a prophet, and he's telling her that she's had 5 husbands. What does that mean? Does she have 5 children there with her? Entirely possible that she has 5 children there with her. But what could those 5 husbands be if not real men? Are there 5 different cults in the area? Is she working for 5 different sex cults? Has she been employed at 5 different? Because what he says to her is magical. She says, I see that you are a prophet for knowing that I have had 5 husbands. And now we're at 29, 31, 32, 33, and I'm going to say thank you for being here. I have been Shaggy Philalitea, and we're going to continue from this chapter in the next video. Thank you for being here. Please come back. I'll see you next time. Take care of yourself, all right? That's what really matters to me.